All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our Tuesday, April 2nd regular meeting. I will have our city clerk's office start with our roll call.
Mayor Kaylee Clark.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Karen Howe.
Here.
Councilmember Amy Lamb.
Here.
Councilmember Pamela Stewart.
Here.
Councilmember Kent Treen.
Present.
Councilmember Sid Gupta.
Here.
Councilmember Roshino Farrell.
Here. Great, thank you so much. Councilmember O'Farrell, if you'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, I will read our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are on the indigenous land of Coast Salish peoples who have reserved treaty rights to this land, specifically Snoqualmie Indian Tribe. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived and continue to live here since time immemorial. All right, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Second?
All right, moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? All right. So next up, we have our public comment. We'll start in the room. All right, Mary?
Hello, my name's Mary Wichter. I've been in Sammamish over 20 years. I brought some shoes that I bought because I wanted long-lasting shoes, and I bought them just a smidge too small. So I don't know what I'm going to do with them now, but my story is about let's not make things that we don't think to the end or that we make them too small. I'm here to talk about the Lewis Thompson Road tight line. It's called a tight line. It's always been called a tight line. And it's for drainage. So we have some flooding pictures here. It's the same picture, just with a car going and then splashing. That's been going since 2013. We need that type of stuff fixed when they put in the entire thing. And there's a couple other places. What I want to focus my attention on is you guys actually approved the Lewis Thompson going from the Parkway and 205th all the way up to 210th Place Southeast. And that's right up here. So this is today's picture. This is when it's raining. And you can actually see that the water goes all the way to here, and sometimes it overflows or overtops. That's what caused a $1.3 million landslide in 2015. It took the city 4 years to fix it. Also that water, I just did this for the rushing flows. They're really rushing because there's at least 15 houses that have no detention because they were built in Tamarack a long time ago, and they just dump into the ditch and it flows down into the city's property. That actually makes really fast outfalls that erode and degrade and go into Zaccoose Creek. So Zaccoose Creek at the bottom, it looks really gravelly, mushy, yucky, terrible when all those gushy flows and sediment are transported down. And this is what it looked like the first year that the Zaccoose culvert was put in. There was hardly any room. And then you can see Mark Cross is standing here with his foot. The fish really can't get under. That's going to continue happening unless you deal with the flows from the top. So since you have it approved all the way to 210th and the city's stopping 300 feet short, 300 feet. They're stopping way down by this house down here. What they're going to do is take out trees and put a sidewalk and fill a ditch that used to be used, and they're not putting any storm pipe there. So I'm really worried about that, and thus my shoes. So what I'd like to see is we have this. There used to be a culvert there, and on the other side, you can go and you can connect them. I went there today because it's pretty flat and it's a really deep ditch. It's even big enough for a detention pipe, so whatever water would get split over to there, because you can use flow splitters. There's a whole area. I mean, it's 67 paces to 87 paces of my feet, so it's like 250, 300 feet. And I really think you need to do it, because I honestly don't think you should spend almost $10 million on a project to do storm drainage as a primary thing, put a sidewalk on top of it, and not have a pipe under every one of those that can take the overflows and the fast flows so that it helps Zaccoose Creek. So let's not silo our stormwater, let's connect them. and I will try to figure out how to get the right size shoes if you'll help me with the pipe. I would like to meet with somebody from staff.
Thank
Couple
you.
key people, thank you.
Sarita?
My name is Sarita Zimmerman, and I knew that you were going to be doing something on Arbor Day, and so I came up, and I don't know your agenda, what you've offered, but I'd like to offer if you have anything where you invite people to come and look at what is environmentally what you have done with your property. We have a little over an acre, and when we moved in 77, it was mostly grass. And we have, over the years, developed it, putting in all kinds of interesting plants and trees. We have lots of old growth cedar. So it is just, it takes care of the environment. And so we'd be happy to share that if it's part of your Arbor Day or later on. So that's all I came to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim?
Hi there, I'm Jim Goulding. I live in Sammamish for the last 13 years, and I just want to talk about tree canopies. I hear a lot of things going on about the town center. I think all of you ran on something with environmental issues when I read the pamphlet, but I'm not really hearing anything happening with tree canopies in our area. Last time I think I read it was at 48%, and I think that was several years ago, if I'm not mistaken. And when I see everybody's talking about trees are dying off, we have the town center taking 135 trees out. What are we doing to address that issue? I've heard people talk about arborists, maybe getting a tree bank. I thought was a great idea, but I'm not really hearing any solutions as to how to address that in Sammamish, and it's important. I mean, 10 straight months of record heat around the world. We need that carbon capture. And I'd like to start hearing something from the council as to what are we doing about it here in Sammamish. I know people on city councils like to be known for buildings that they build. Like you get your town center, I was a part of that. But the person that I'm inspired by is the person who did nothing, who saved, and that was John Muir. He decided, let's leave Yosemite the way it is. And today that's considered a brilliant idea. So hopefully the city council will take into account what is happening out there and start coming up with some issues and some ideas, and we brought them forward like I talked about earlier, or it was talked about I think last time I was at this meeting. Tree banks, get the developers to start paying to get more trees in the ground here, because we're going one way and it's down. We need to reverse that and get it going up, so please consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Julie? And Troop 40177?
Hi, I'm Hannah Thorson, and I'm 9 years old, and we are in 3rd grade at Sunny Hills, and we're all in Girl Scouts Troop 40177.
Hi, I'm Lila, and we're here because we want to rent Beaver Lake Lodge for not as much money.
Hi, I'm Madeline. Our troop likes to meet at Beaver Lake Lodge because we can earn outdoor badges and play games and go inside if it rains.
If there's nowhere for community to meet, then there's no community. I'm Julie Shar, and I'm one of the troop leaders for 15 amazing 3rd graders, 3 of whom were courageous enough to come speak in front of you all tonight. The proposed hourly rate of a discount of 25% off or anything remotely close to it would be financially impossible for our troop to pay without significant due changes and would result in barriers to participation and us not being able to rent out the lodge. For history, we've been there for 3 years. We meet about once a month. We understand the need to charge a nominal amount to fulfill the public gifts requirement, but it seems the proposed prices are looking for financial gain. Nonprofits like ourselves cannot afford this increase, and we would not rent the lodge, so we wonder who is renting it at these full prices on weekday afternoons. As taxpayers, I think we would find it disappointing to find that this resource is sitting unused when there are groups that do good in our community that would like to use it and are unable to. Charging high fees to nonprofits for hourly rentals hurts not only our small troop, but will harm the entire community. Nonprofit organizations play vital roles in enriching our community, and we all benefit from their efforts. If these groups can't consistently meet and invest in our area's well-being, we'll all suffer. It's crucial to recognize that a person's mental health is closely tied to their community connections. By depriving hundreds of Sammamish residents of opportunities to gather and pursue shared altruistic goals, we harm the collective mental well-being of our community. We respectfully request a nominal amount be collected from nonprofits who wish to use the lodge to conduct their meetings. If additional value is needed by the Parks Department in exchange for use of the structure, we respectfully propose nonprofits be given the opportunity to perform community service or find alternative ways to pay off the fees. Girl Scouts, other scouting and youth organizations has shown to positively impact youth, not just in their youth, but as they grow to adulthood. They're more engaged in civic activities. They report positive outcomes in life. They're more engaged in environmental activities. Beaver Lake Lodge is unique in that it offers an indoor and outdoor space. The other proposal areas do not offer that, and so we really hope that you'll consider a reasonable rate for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Did anyone else not get a chance to sign up? Alrighty. Online?
Per the new reasonable accommodation, those who had pre-registered by 3 o'clock today, please raise your hand if you wish to give testimony. Pre-registered callers will be unmuted in the order they've raised their hand. You have 3 minutes to provide comment. Please start your comment by stating your name and the city in which you live for the record. And I will now unmute the first caller.
Hello, City Council members. Paul Stickney, Sammamish. Just wanted to chat briefly about the written comment I turned in today and just make a couple statements and invite conversations about it, because it's more than just a chat for a couple minutes. It takes a little bit. But I wanted to talk about two words that really matter, and they are habitability and richer. And I define habitability as allowing residents that live and or work in Sammamish now to have good options to stay for life, and planning for the legacy of future generations. And maybe it's not a huge number, but there's a lot of people that had to leave Sammamish over time because our housing supplies were a little out of whack to stay. Give some of those folks a chance to come back to the city they love and enjoy that's gotten substantially better over the years. Riches in Sammamish are added values that we can attain over and above those we enjoy today. They fall mainly in 4 categories: financially, qualities of life, many aspects to that, a strong, tightly knit social fabric that keeps a good mix of generations and cultures and ethnicities, etc., and environmentally, just tons of things there. So I proposed in a comment today 3 changes to the comprehensive plan that included increasing the size of town center now, dealing with the Eastman sub-area because those areas are ready, and then plan sustainable housing supplies citywide that only deal mostly with sub-areas and the bonus parcels and leave residential areas pretty much untouched. And it's a holistic thing. If somebody focuses on one thing, it's very difficult. But if one looks at many, many things, 30 or 40 things, and the effects on everything, you sort of start to realize that, oh gee whiz, there is net positive low impact aspects to this. So I'd like to close by saying optimal habitability and added riches are the outcomes we must strive for. To achieve them, we must employ the right numbers to make them happen and realize benefits. And the right numbers can be net positive, low impact, as I said before, and add enrichments across the board. That's my comment. Have a good evening, and thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's all for public comment.
Great, thank you so much. All right, everyone, we have our consent calendar. I will entertain a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Did anyone have any questions on any of the items? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, so now we are on to our proclamations. We'll start with Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Councilmember O'Farrell.
Sexual Assault Awareness Month, April 2024. Whereas sexual assault is pervasive, every 68 seconds someone is sexually assaulted in the United States. And whereas Black, Indigenous, and other people of color, people living in poverty, LGBTQ people, elders, people with disabilities, and others who have been historically oppressed are disproportionately affected by sexual violence in significant and complex ways. And whereas sexual assault is among the most unreported crimes for many reasons, but survivors who are already most marginalized face additional barriers to reporting, such as language, immigration status, or disability. And whereas ending sexual violence requires us to address racism, sexism, and all forms of oppression that contribute to the prevention of sexual assault, and whereas sexual violence exists on a continuum of behavior that includes racist, sexist, transphobic, homophobic, and other hate speech, and this ranges from rape jokes to verbal harassment to physical assaults. And whereas by working together as a community, we can alleviate the trauma of sexual violence by ensuring supportive resources are available to all survivors while standing up to and directly disrupting harmful attitudes and behaviors that contribute to sexual violence. And whereas King County is home to many organizations that provide culturally and linguistically specific services for survivors from various racial, ethnic, faith, and cultural communities, survivors who are immigrants and refugees, survivors who are LGBTQ, and survivors with disabilities, these culturally specific services are critical to effectively respond to the specific needs and barriers many survivors face. And whereas working together as a community, we can alleviate the trauma of sexual violence by ensuring supportive resources are available to all survivors while standing up to harmful attitudes and behaviours that contribute to sexual assault. Now, therefore, Mayor Kaylee Clark, on behalf of Sammamish City Council, join advocates and communities throughout King County in taking action to prevent sexual violence by standing with survivors and proclaiming April 2024 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month. Together, we commit to a safer future for all our children, young people, adults, and families in our community.
Great, thank you. Food Waste Prevention Week, Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you, Mayor. April 8th through the 14th is our proclamation for Food Waste Prevention Week. Whereas the City of Sammamish recognizes the critical importance of addressing food waste to combat hunger, reduce environmental impact, and strengthen local economies. And whereas food is a valuable resource and wasting food also wastes the water, energy, labor, materials, and land used to make and transport the food. And whereas Washington State generates an estimated 1.2 million tons of food waste annually, according to the Washington Center for Sustainable Food Management. And whereas in the United States, approximately 40% of all food produced is wasted, equivalent to over 80 billion pounds annually, valued at approximately $161 billion. And wasted food is the largest single component of solid waste in U.S. landfills, where it generates methane, a potent greenhouse gas. And whereas food waste prevention is a critical strategy for reducing greenhouse gas emissions and mitigating climate change, as well as conserving natural resources such as water, land, and energy. And whereas addressing food waste presents an opportunity to alleviate hunger and food insecurity, as well as support local food systems and economies by redirecting excess food to those in need. And whereas businesses, organizations, governments, and individuals across Washington state are committed to preventing food waste through strategies such as food donation, composting, source reduction, and other innovative approaches. And whereas the city of Sammamish recognizes the importance of raising awareness about food waste prevention and encouraging all residents to take action to reduce food waste in their home, businesses, schools, and communities. Now therefore be it resolved that the city of Sammamish does hereby proclaim the week of April 8th through the 14th, 2024 as Food Waste Prevention Week. If I could take a moment just to add some local context to this. Sammamish, our waste goes to Cedar Hills landfill, and Cedar Hills services all of King County. Only 2 cities don't send their waste to Cedar Hills. Currently, Cedar Hills is almost at max capacity. They're expecting about 7 more years of life to Cedar Hills, at which point we will have to send our waste outside. That could either be incineration or it could be by railway. Both probably aren't something we'd like to see. 30% of our waste at Cedar Hills is food waste. So I encourage everybody, it's really important to divert our organic waste and food waste from garbage so that we can keep Cedar Hills open longer. And so, diverting it is just simply putting it into your yard waste bin, and that would go to composting.
Thank you. Arbor Day, Councilmember Treen.
Thank you, Mayor. Sammamish, Washington, Arbor Day Proclamation, April 10th, 2024. Whereas in 1872, J. Sterling Morton proposed to Nebraska Board of Agriculture that a special day be set aside for the planting of trees. And whereas Arbor Day was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska and is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas Sammamish adopted an urban forest management plan in 2019, and whereas the Sammamish City Council expressed its desire for the city to pursue official Tree City USA recognition by the National Arbor Day Foundation and to continue tree planting and care efforts in the city, and whereas trees and forests absorb carbon dioxide and produce oxygen, keep our air clean and water safe to drink, reduce topsoil erosion, provide wildlife habitat, promote physical fitness and improve mental health, decrease temperatures on hot days, and mitigate surface water runoff. And whereas planting for the right tree in the right place helps trees grow strong and healthy, and whereas maintaining healthy trees and forest canopy is an efficient strategy to combat the negative effects of climate change, and whereas trees increase your property value, enhance the environment, and beautify the community. And whereas Arbor Day is an opportunity to celebrate Sammamish's forested areas and educate the community about the importance of trees. Now therefore be it resolved that Mayor Kaylee Clark, on behalf of the Sammamish City Council, do hereby proclaim April 10th, 2024 as Arbor Day in the city of Sammamish. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All righty, now we are moving to our monthly council projects updates with David Pyle and Audrey Starcy.
I'm going to do a sound check and just verify you can hear me.
All good.
Great. Wonderful. All right, good evening, Mayor, Council, David Pyle, Department of Community Development. With me is Audrey Starcy from the city's Public Works Department. This evening, we have for you your April 2024 major planning projects update. I'll get started with an overview of the months to come. It was hard to fit all of it on the screen, and in fact, there are a few dates that are not shown here with regard to some additional planned meetings for informational overview for things like the Parks Commission and others. We did, however, include the important ones, and we will continue to try to add and refine this list. You can see we have quite a bit going on. Most of the work is happening in the arena of the Planning Commission prior to transitioning over to the City Council later this spring and after the summer break. The first major project is the comprehensive plan. We have pushed out a public release draft, and we are now in the process of reviewing that draft with the Planning Commission, taking public comment on that, and incorporating that feedback and comment into the draft. We do anticipate by the time it reaches the City Council, it will be the fourth draft. This is currently the first draft. We'll be updating the draft. A second draft will be pushed out. Finally, a third draft will be pushed out for public hearing, and it will then be transitioned over to the City Council for work, and it will be considered the fourth draft at that point. So there's quite a bit of work to do on this, and we're really happy with the draft so far. However, there are definitely a lot of areas of opportunity for improvement. I do want to highlight that on June 20th, we are planning an open house that will precede the Planning Commission meeting that evening. So we will be convening the commission early and holding an open house where commissioners will be asked to intermingle with community members and hear feedback and comment on both the comprehensive plan itself and the implementing development regulations that go along with that plan. So want to keep an eye on that date. June 20th will be the next major open house for the comprehensive plan. However, all of the dates leading up to that point are also great opportunities for community involvement and engagement, and we would love to hear from community members who want to participate in those meetings. And if anybody has any questions or interest in the comp plan, can feel free to reach out to myself or the comprehensive plan team. Evan Fisher is the project manager for that, and we'd be happy to talk with and meet with any community members who might have interest in the plan. The Town Center Plan and Code Amendment project. The timeline for the Town Center Plan Amendment and Code Update project has been extended to accommodate a change in the city's transportation consultant. However, work is continuing on the project, including key tasks under Phase 1 and Phase 2, including existing conditions, a code audit, and stakeholder outreach and coordination. The next project updates to the Planning Commission and City Council are scheduled for May 7th. However, depending on how transportation engineering services procurement works out, it could be postponed to June 20th. I did want to reflect that here in the timeline. We are also planning to hold an informational session with the Parks Commission on May 1st, and I'm coordinating with the Parks staff on that, and we'll be attending that meeting to provide an overview to Parks Commissioners and answer any questions they might have, as best I can, at least. With regard to critical areas, we've concluded the initial round of review of the different critical area required elements that are required under the Growth Management Act. We are now in the point of refinement. We are working through some items that were identified as needing additional feedback. We will be bringing those to the City Council on May 7th and asking the Council for some direction where there are some decision points before taking it back to the Planning Commission for further review, and ultimately leading up to a Planning Commission public hearing in July before transitioning that over to the City Council after the summer break. The streamlining permitting process project, in response to SB 5290, we will be providing a City Council an overview as part of a workshop on April 9th, where we'll walk through the proposed changes. We do have some decision points to work on. We would like feedback on those from the City Council, so we will be prepared to walk you through some of the issues we're facing with regard to streamlining and improving our permit process, and are hoping to get some feedback and direction so that we can go back and make some draft code amendments and then bring those back to the Planning Commission, ideally for a public hearing on April 18th. However, depending on the magnitude of code amendments, it's possible that could get pushed out into later in the spring. With that, I'll pass it over to Audrey, who will talk about the Transportation Master Plan. Audrey?
Thank you, David. Good evening, Council. We are very excited to bring the Transportation Master Plan to Planning Commission on May 16th and June 6th. We'll have 1 to 2 more meetings with Planning Commission after that in July, and we'll be bringing that forward to Council after it goes through our Planning Commission. Next slide, please. And our stormwater code amendments are going to Planning Commission on May 2nd and 16th. These are relatively minor code amendments with regards to our low impact development and implementation of some of those codes, particularly those systems that end up on privately maintained parcels. So it's more of operational, but we need to do a little bit of refinement for our stormwater addendum. And this is one of those areas that we ran out of room on the slide, so that will be going to Council after it goes through Planning Commission on June 4th. So look forward to that discussion with Council as well. That's all we had. Happy to take any questions.
I did want to back up to one slide here and just make sure to orient the Council. As we've heard some recent comment from community members as part of the Planning Commission and as part of the Council meetings regarding a proposal with the city's future land use map related to the Southeast 4th parcels. And I wanted to point out to the Council that we will be working with the Commission on some alternatives. We're working through some different ideas as to how that might work. The concept there was to ultimately try to increase the supply of middle housing opportunities, market-driven middle housing opportunities. And we are aware of some community concerns, and we're wanting to work through those. And we will be working on some alternatives with the Commission in the meetings to come, and are hoping that the community members will continue to engage with us and discuss some of the concerns they have and find ways to mitigate those concerns while still providing opportunity to add capacity for middle housing in an area that's primed for it. Thank you.
Great, thank you both. Council, any questions? Comments? Awesome. Well, thank you. I think, well, at least we'll see you, David, next week.
Yes, and we appreciate your patience while all this work makes its way through the Planning Commission and Parks Commission. It's a lot. We've got a lot ahead of us, and we're looking forward to getting it in front of the Council, but we want to make sure we've got it right before we get it in front of you. So thank you.
Definitely. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, now we're on to unfinished business. Council goals with Scott and probably Mike.
Correct. Thank you, Mayor. Once Mike gets booted up here, I'll turn it over to Mike to kick us off. Mike, please proceed.
Yes. Thank you, Scott. Good evening, Council. Mike Sugg, Supervising Management Analyst for the City Manager's Office. Tonight, we are here to follow up on the definitions of success, which were originally discussed as part of the Council retreat, and most recently during your meeting on March 12th. During the discussion on March 12th, the Council appeared to have consensus around making 3 changes. The first of those changes was to update the language in the environment goal, where it says to enhance the environment if appropriate, to instead say enhance when appropriate. The second change was to add a new definition of success under the environment goal to enact policies and programs that will lead to reduced greenhouse gas emissions and solid waste throughout the community. And the final update was to create a new definition of success under the safety goal to monitor public safety response times and coordinate with police and fire partners on strategies to maintain response times. And those 3 changes are reflected in the updated document included as Exhibit 1 in your meeting packet tonight. We also discussed at the March 12th meeting measurements for these goals. And in that area, it is staff's recommendation to use the community survey measurements. As we discussed previously, and as are shown in Exhibit 1, the community survey results are expected at the end of May, and they will provide a comprehensive picture of community sentiment in all of the Council's goal areas. If it turns out that a measurement is missing, then we can always choose to say that we really think it'd be helpful to have that in the future. But staff believe it will be good to see all of the survey data first before we make that decision, as it is a very comprehensive data set that we will receive from the survey. So tonight, staff recommends Council approve the updated goals and definitions of success document included as Exhibit 1 to your packet tonight. And with that short introduction, I will go ahead and turn it back over to the Mayor for any discussion.
Great, thank you, Mike. Thank you for all your work on this as well. Council, did you have any comments, questions, further amendments, a motion to approve, anything? Who is that? Councilmember O'Farrell.
Thank you, Mayor. Mike, we had received some public comment about the environmental goal to remove the phrase when appropriate. And I think I understand why we have that in there, but I just kind of wanted to kind of speak about that, to kind of flesh out why we have that phrase there, because it's not always appropriate to enhance the natural environment if it is already whole and perfect as it is, correct? And that it's only where it's appropriate where we would enhance it if we were mitigating some issue, that kind of thing. That's the reason why we have that language in there. Am I right in saying that?
Yes, I saw your email, Councilmember O'Farrell, and I did respond to it late today, so you may not have seen it. But what I was able to find on this was that that phrase was actually added when Council was originally approving the goals in October of 2022. And it was at the request of a public commenter that that phrase be added. And the council member that brought it forward at the time for consideration said that the language was a good idea because, as you noted, it may not be appropriate to enhance the natural environment. And that could be because of cost prohibitions, because the environment is, good the way it is already, or for any other reasons. So just providing a little bit of context there, that's why it was originally added. But like many of the council's goals, all of it is kind of if appropriate or when appropriate. We wouldn't intentionally do something that wasn't appropriate. So I think it kind of goes without saying, but at the same time, I think it shows that the council or the city is, I guess, expressing its discretion to do that enhancement for the times that it is truly appropriate. So I don't know if that helps at all, but
yeah,
that's what I was able to find.
Thank you, Mike. No, I just wanted to bring it up and kind of talk about why that particular phrase is there, and I'm totally fine with it being there, and I think that's a good enough reason, because it's not always appropriate to do anything, so or to touch the natural environment if it's fully functioning as it is. So, so thank you for the explanation.
Councilmember Lamb.
So I'm still concerned that there aren't measurable goals. Scott and I had a conversation last Friday about this, but I think that it's great that we will have the community survey, but again, that is just the community perception, and it is important to have actual data, quantitative data, and I don't think it's difficult to come up with one or two pieces of data for each of the different council goals. And I, really quickly came up with one or two, which I think would work. And this is information that is readily available. For fiscal sustainability, we could have the general fund balance and forecast. What are those numbers? For safety, I was glad to see that police and fire response times were there. We could also add traffic-related collisions. We can have Gov Delivery signups for alerts. For DEIB, I think it's important to have the demographics of our city job applicants, employees, and boards and commissions. For housing, I think we could show the first permit review time and customer satisfaction and permit with the permits, total housing permits issued by type. For transportation, the average transit boarding and at all Sammamish stops, and something that we've been working on, the percentage of sidewalk gaps that will complete. For the environment, what is the residential recycling diversion rate? We can readily get that information from Republic. And as we heard from public comment, people are talking about the tree canopy. I mean, I'd like to know the number of trees planted on city properties, such as our parks and open space. I mean, overall, I very much support the council goals. I just don't support that there aren't any measurable data associated with it. And so I'd actually like to amend the approval to approve the council goals, but that the city manager comes back with measurable goals, 1 or 2 measurable goals in a couple of months, in 2 months.
That was a motion to do that?
Yes, I motion that we adopt our council goals, but amend that to have the city manager come back with measurables, 1 or 2 measurables for each of the council goals.
Second. Oh, sorry.
Second. Okay, so moved and seconded. So what am I voting on first? I always forget this. The amendment or the entire thing?
It was one motion.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah. Did you want to speak to that first, Councilmember Lamb, before I pass it on to?
I think I spoke to it.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Howe?
Okay, I completely understand where you're coming from with this, Councilmember Lamb, because you can't manage what you can't measure. I mean, that's just a true thing. However, I do think the staff presented a reasonable argument in that we do the survey first and then from that learn what's important to measure. Having a number for the sake of having a number is not terribly useful, but having a number that really means something to us because it's highly prioritized, that's a different matter. And if you look at the data that you provided from Kirkland, which really great statistics, that data is from 2018. They have not updated it or maintained it. And it was largely based on their survey. That was where they got their data. So what I'm wondering is, it's sort of like, I agree with you, and if we did the survey, would there be a natural outgrowth of clearly the prioritized statistics that we should measure so that we can manage it better? So that is sort of my question and my comment towards your amendment.
Councilmember Stewart?
Yeah, I appreciate the motion on the floor because I think it allows us to move forward with the goals that we have as we continue to work on the measurements. And I think both things can be true. I think Councilmember Lamb and Deputy Mayor Howe both raise great points. And I think that our measurements should be a combination of things we see from the community, as well as there are clear goals and objectives, right? I actually think we should have measurements for each of those objectives because I think some of them are clearly things that we already know. For example, our reduction in greenhouse gases. We already know what our overall goal is, and so irrespective of what the community comes back with, we need to be setting goals over each 2-year period to make sure that we can achieve the goals that we have voted on as a matter of resolution in terms of the reduction in greenhouse gases. So I think that some of these things we can set independently, and it may take a few iterations, so I think we can start working on it in parallel and use both the community survey responses as well as some other measurements that we already know we need to look at. So I would like to see us move forward with what we've got and continue to work to get some real measurements, because you're right, we can't manage what we can't measure, and we need to at least, you know, in my day-to-day job, the cool part about having those types of measurements and those clear key results that we're driving towards is it helps us with the prioritization process. And that's going to be really critical year over year as we continue to have more and more requests from the community and more to do, but not necessarily an equal number of additional resources. So really being able to have those measurements to make those really difficult trade-off decisions is going to be important. Thanks.
Councilmember O'Farrell?
Thank you, Mayor. I just had a question for Scott. When we get the results back from the survey, it's from the survey that we're going to develop some of the data, some of the quantitative goals to these particular goals. Is that kind of what we're hoping to accomplish?
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember. I think if Council will recall, what we tried to do was line up the Council goals with questions in the community survey that reflected those goals. And there were between 5 and 7 in general per goal, where those lined up. And so what we are hoping to do is both get the survey results back, but because we're using the same firm as we did the last time this was done, we'll actually be able to compare back to, I think the last time it was completed was 2018. But then moving forward, we'll be able to compare, when we do the survey, we'll be able to compare years in more close succession. So yes, that's the way that it was designed, is to get that information back and then assess where we are based on what those results show.
This is a survey we anticipate doing every year?
I think we're every 2 years.
Every 2 years,
Yeah.
okay. And then we would update the data based on the survey every 2 years. Okay.
And in part, Councilmember, just if I may, I think if you'll recall, the reason for doing the survey is to help better for council to get that information and to help make decisions, as was just referred to by Councilmember Stewart, that information will help you all in your decision making about what are priorities for the community.
Yeah, I mean, I think I support that I'm interested, and I take Councilmember Lamb's point about having quantitative goals with our council goals, but I'd like them to be on issues that are important to the community, and kind of gleaning that from the survey I think is a very valid way to do that, so I would definitely support that.
Councilmember Gupta or Treen, do you have anything? Councilmember Treen?
Yeah, so I do support the adoption of an updated council goals and definitions of success that are displayed in Exhibit 1, but at this time I'm not in favor of the current motion on the floor due to the fact that there's some work that still needs to be done on that side. Thank you.
Councilmember Gupta?
So if the motion on the floor is allowing the city manager a couple of months to come back with measurables. By then, if I'm understanding correctly, we would have the survey results. So to me, that makes sense because we will have the survey results. We can see what information they're providing us, and then as council, we can identify if there are any gaps, if there's anything we feel is missing that we would like to see measured year over year. So that hopefully we can, in addition to the community results, make sure we're tracking anything that doesn't have to happen to be captured by that survey. Because from my understanding, that survey was very standardized so that it can be compared against other communities. We just want to make sure that anything we identify as being particularly important to Sammamish that doesn't happen to be captured in that survey is recorded and reflected so that it can help inform our decision making going forward. So I think I do support the motion on the floor.
A clarification real quick. The motion initially had a time, and the second, when it was restated, did not have a time. So if you could clarify the time certain for the manager to return with the goals. Thank you.
I would say end of June. If the survey's coming out the end of May, the end of June.
So I will not be supporting the motion on the floor as, I mean, if these are our goals for the calendar year, I think by the time we got something or maybe agreed on something, we'd be over halfway through the year. So I definitely support potential measurements with this survey data for calendar year 2025, unless we do like a June to July or something year for these goals. But I think this is what I said last time. I think I really like these goals. I think we have done a ton of work on them. Since we were not successful last year in making measurements, I do not support waiting another 2 months to add the measurements. Councilmember Lamb?
I guess I would counter that by saying we didn't have measurables last year, and we're not going to have measurables this year. And granted, we're halfway into the year, but again, these measurables are not difficult to implement. I mean, this is just data that we can readily pull. You know, why wouldn't we have for the environment have a number on the number of trees that we're planting in our parks? And we will see these numbers year over year, irregardless of what the public survey says, and there is something about that, I believe, but that's something we want as council. It is part of our council goal as for the environment. So I'm not asking for staff to spend hours to find measurables. These measurables exist for other cities, and I was also looking at I think it was Issaquah's. The reason so some of the measurables I pulled is also from Issaquah and from Kirkland. And the reason they have them is that they also check their goals among other cities. So if some of our goals, some of our measurable goals are the same as Issaquah, we can also see how we're also doing collectively as a region. So I'm trying to say that it's good that we have this information, but it's also good to be able to compare to our neighboring cities. So I just, we've been working on this now for a year and a half, and this will be just another year. The sooner we can get this data, for this year, then it's just 1 year that we'll have on our books. The next year we don't have to go through this again. Or we can add and adjust if we don't think the numbers, if the measurable is working for us. But, I didn't pull this out of thin air. It was relative to what our other neighboring cities are doing. Thank you.
I just had one question of clarification. What I heard you say is more of a baseline number. Like, I don't know what we would do for the goal. Would it be retain a certain percentage? That's where I think that work would be. So if it's like, if you just said like tree canopy coverage, so is it retain that goal? Is it just showing this is the measurement that we have currently? So that's more of a baseline goal. I don't see that as a, or just like retain, increase, then that's what I was confused, I think, about. If that's what you're asking staff to do, is come up with the mechanism to choose what that measurement is.
So for the tree canopy, we would hopefully have a baseline of the number of trees that how many trees do we plant this year in our parks? We should know that. And so next year, are we going to try and plant more? Or do we keep it the same? I guess it's just for a way, we had public comment. What are we doing about our tree canopy? It would be good to have year over year measurements to know how we're doing. He just said we were cutting 135 trees. Are we going to make that up somewhere else? And if we do, we can reflect that. So it is a reflection of how we're doing and how we're protecting our environment, and we need that data.
Yeah, I think I'm still confused, but Councilmember Stewart?
Yeah, I love this discussion because I think that this discussion is exactly why we need to start working this year on some of those measurables, because it's going to take us 6 months after we get this survey to get a good set to start next year, so that next year we can start in January. Because the very conversation that we're having here, is it to increase? If it's to increase, by how much? Is it just to maintain? That's the lack of clarity that our current goals and objectives have. Not that they're bad, they're great goals and objectives, and we have made a ton of progress and we've done a lot of work on them. But to get to that next level of specificity so that staff has that clarity that says, hey, we have a goal to increase by X percent. That means that if we're going to do X, we need to make up some of those trees. Or as we implement the tree bank, is there some big push we can do every Arbor Day to plant 1,000 trees? Or is it 100? Or is it 2,000, right? We don't really know because we don't have that level of specificity. So I like the motion on the floor because it allows us to adopt these goals. We're not stopping any progress that we have, and we're going to continue to push forward to have the discussion, because I think it's going to take us the rest of this year to land on something pretty decent, and then we can come out of the gate in January sailing down the road super fast. Although I really want to see us sailing down the road. Yes, thank you. Mixing those metaphors, sorry.
Deputy Mayor Howe?
And I think I look at things a little differently. Simply because I think we can disaggregate these numbers. Yes, it's important to know how many trees we have currently, how many are dying, and how many we plan on replanting, and so forth. But that it doesn't have to be even tied to the goal. It just is a thing we should know. in the same way that we should know, these are all different segments. I mean, like what's our response times for police? Has crime gone up or gone down? Hey, are there more accidents or less? I think I would prefer to see these not attached to the goals yet. And it's really a timing issue for me to push the city manager or staff to come up with something that we barely have time to even address because the data is fresh. I'd prefer to give it more time. It's going to naturally percolate out, and we're going to need these numbers, like for garbage, how much are we doing on composting and things like that. Those are all stats we should be tracking all the time anyway. So these proclamations that we just do for the week, they can't be just for the week, right? It has to mean something all year round, all the time. And those are the types of things I think we should be just continuing to pull in to see how we are doing. But to come up with how much better we should be, that is going to take time. And until, frankly, we get the surveys back, have time to digest the information, because it really does have to be based on what the community feels is important. You and I may think certain things are important. If the community doesn't back that, I don't think we should spend energy on it. So I'm ambivalent about your amendment. If I were to propose a friendly amendment, I would say before the end of the year, we have some measurements to give time, because I am very concerned about a 60-day window where we're setting someone up to fail.
I'll second that amendment.
Right now, I'm going to get all confused. Councilmember Tring, go ahead if you want to speak to that.
I guess, was that an official amendment, Ms. Council? Okay, I'll second that amendment, and here's the reason why. Currently, I believe, city manager can correct me if I'm wrong here, we're not fully staffed right now. So we are in the middle of and in the process of doing a very large comprehensive plan update and all the steps and all the stuff that's going on that. We have already allocated money, funds to do that. At this point right now, we need all hands on deck to even bring that to us by the end of the year. So if the council chooses to continue to add more and more to the work plan, then it's like at the expense of what else? And I do understand the fact that some of the numbers are easy to grab, and some of those are actually already on there. So the idea is, okay, we've made the next step on these plans moving forward, and then really it's 2025 that we say, okay, here's the measurables. Here's what we actually believe here's where I'm coming from, based on our comprehensive plan, based on our land use, based on our transportation master plan. And if you want, I can go on and list all the other pieces of the comprehensive plan, which includes 3 new sections that we've never had in this city before. So we have to hash all that stuff out, and we're gonna separate out the maps, which hasn't even come to us yet. You get where I'm going. It's way more work, and who's doing the work? So if it's the staff that's bringing that to us and they're doing the work, why would you continue to pile on to them when we're already down staff and those people aren't probably coming on board as fast as you think? And even if we get them on board, they have to onboard and even understand what their jobs are. That's 6 to 8 months. So to push this, I just think is a mistake. So if you push it out to the end of the year as amended by Councilmember Howe, I could be in support of it for the reasons I just listed. Thank you.
You're good, Councilmember Gupta. Councilmember Lamb.
So I am fine with pushing this out until the end of the year. My goal is to just have the measurables. To Councilmember Howe's point, these measurables are to see whether or not our plans work. It's to see whether or not what we're doing for housing and lowering the barriers increase our permits. And that's one of the data points would be to see how many permits in each of the housing categories that we're receiving. So it's just capturing, are we being successful in what we're doing as a city? To Councilmember Treen's point, we've been working on this for 2 years. I have been on council and we have set goals 2 years now. And so I don't believe that this is asking for a lot. You know, we had issues coming up with the measurables the first time and a second time. So I don't think that this is a hard lift, especially when the numbers are available. Thank you.
Councilmember Gupta, would you like to speak to the motion on the floor?
Yeah, so I think to Deputy Mayor Howe's point of the reason of why these are linked, as I understand it, the goals are informing the survey, right? The work was done to link the goals with the survey that we're giving to the community, and then the survey will then inform the dashboard, which seemed to be a high priority coming out of our council retreat. So I think that's the linkage, making sure that, again, we are capturing all the data that we need to capture, and the goal of the dashboard, from my understanding, is just to present data to the public, to the community, making it easily accessible. To Councilmember Lamb's point, a lot of this data already exists. I know from my experience in the Parks Commission, how many plants we plant, how many volunteer hours we have, that data already exists, but people might not know where to look for it, and that's kind of the goal of the dashboard is, hey, this is a very visually appealing, very accessible way to access all of this data. So whether it's 2 months or 6 months, I don't think that matters. I think that is why, from my understanding, these are linked, because one feeds into the next, which feeds into the next, which leads to the goal of, this is what we're doing, here's how you can see as a community member what the city and council are doing. And if I'm wrong, please correct me.
Deputy Mayor Howe.
And just to put just a finer point on things, it's really hard to actually look at what you think is just data and then come up with the correct conclusion. For example, number of permits for housing. Is it because interest rates went up or down? Is it because you really did make a process easier or not? Is it, there are multiple reasons why things happen the way that they do. And it's very easy to get this information wrong and to have an unintended consequence from not understanding how to ask the question. A customer satisfaction. Well, is that because they didn't understand the process? Is it because the process is flawed? Is it because they're in a bad mood and rated you poorly? So in order to have really good data, you have to be, all I'm suggesting is it just takes time to come up with how to interpret information in such a way that you have a valuable piece of information. So hence the weight, but it sounds like there may be not too much of an argument about the weight. So maybe we can move on.
All right, so the motion on the floor is council goals and definitions of success. The words are good, and if we can have some stabs at measurables over the next 6 months, hopefully by the end of December, then we are good with that. Is that correct? Yeah, Scott?
Mayor, if I may, I believe you have an amendment on the floor to the original motion, and you have to vote on the amendment question first and then on the full motion. Yeah.
The friendly amendment. I'm doing
friendly
Deputy
amendment,
Mayor
yes.
Howe's, which is the 6 month.
Yeah.
Yeah, or which is the end of the year.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is what is on the floor now. So let's do maybe a raise of hands just in case we're split here. So all of those in favor of Deputy Mayor Howe's amendment to the amendment.
It's not an amendment.
Aye.
Thank you, Pam.
Sorry, Mayor. It's yeah, I believe it's an amendment to the original motion. There's just one amendment on the floor, as I heard.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, great. Mike, do you have what you need?
Now you need to vote on the main motion.
Okay, for which part? The motion to actually pass it?
To actually pass the goals with the measurables.
My God, I can't wait to be done. Okay. All right, all those in favor of Councilmember Lamb's amended motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay. Mike, do you have what you need?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. We will work on a schedule to get this back in front of Council before the end of the year.
All righty. Okay, so next up we have new business, which is adopting amended policy for facility rentals with Anjali and Janie and Emily, I think. So,
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council, Mr. City Manager. I'm Anjali Maya, Director of Parks, Recreation and Facilities. We have for your consideration tonight updates to the city's rental policies for our facilities. With me is Janie Walzer, Management Analyst of our department, and she has a presentation for you which will summarize some of the major changes and also walk you through a proposed new discounted fee for our nonprofits. Online is Emily Scott, our Recreation and Cultural Services Manager, and her team manages the rentals of these facilities. So she will be happy to take any specific questions you have at the end of the presentation. With that, I will turn it over to Jeannie.
Thank you. So as Anjali said, tonight we're asking you to pass a resolution to amend our rental policies of our park facilities, including Beaver Lake Lodge and Pavilion, the picnic shelters, athletic fields, and nonprofits. I will quickly review the history of these policy updates, inform you about the changes that staff have made, and then we have a suggested motion for you. So the city first adopted our rental facility policies in 2007, and they've been updated periodically as needed to match changing staff practices, new municipal code, and the last update was made in 2016. So there are some out-of-date elements that we are hoping to have updated. All of the exact edits were in the agenda bill with track changes, but I'll summarize what was proposed. So a definition of hybrid turf is being added, since that is to be installed in the city. We've also corrected the priority order for scheduling. The existing policy stated that city was first priority, but we schedule schools first. And then with the legalization of marijuana, we have added it to the prohibited substances list. And then the rising popularity of hard seltzers, they are added to the allowed alcohol list for event rentals that acquire an alcohol permit. The edited policies now specifically note that all renters must follow Title 7A of the Sammamish Municipal Code, which is the park rules that were adopted in 2021. And then the Beaver Lake Lodge and Pavilion and picnic rentals also now note that the individual on contracts must be on site for the duration of the rentals. Previously, these were unwritten rules, so we're just adding them to the policy to remove any assumptions from the rental process. And then lastly, the existing policy instructs renters to come to City Hall for the fee schedule and to reserve facilities, but those are both done online now. We are also proposing amendments to the nonprofit rental policy. Beaver Lake Lodge has been made available to nonprofits to reserve free of charge up to 4 hours a month during weekdays only. Per legal advice, this needs to change, as offering rentals at no cost would be considered a gift of public funds, and continuing to offer free rentals would leave the city vulnerable to an audit finding from the state auditor's office. Additionally, the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space, or the PROS plan, Goal 9.5, instructs staff to establish a pricing strategy for rented facilities that aligns with comparable market rates. So looking at those comparable rates and following the guidance of the PROS plan, we researched what other cities are doing. Bellevue has 2 rooms identified for a 30% discount to nonprofits. Maple Valley takes a tiered approach, offering anywhere from 10% to 3% depending on the nonprofit type and purpose. And then Issaquah has 1 room that is a free meeting space. I'd like to note that the meeting rooms in Issaquah and Bellevue are located in community centers that are already staffed full-time, whereas the Beaver Lake Lodge requires our staff to be on call during rentals, as no one is there at the facility. So taking the average of these discounts and the cities with no discounted rate, the market average is a 17% discount for nonprofits. So staff propose a 2-tiered approach, offering a 15% discount to nonprofit organizations, and then an increased 25% discount for nonprofits based in Sammamish and serving Sammamish youth. And this would include Girl and Boy Scout troops, school groups, and parent-teachers associations, and the like. Additionally, the existing nonprofit rental policy limiting 4 hours a month would be removed. Since staff are going to be proposing charging a fee, we can remove that cap. However, what was that? Staff are recommending to remove the cap of 4 hours per month for nonprofits. Yes, since organizations will be charged a fee, we're taking that cap out. And then organizations will still be held to the facility policy of a 2-hour minimum rental for each rental time. There are alternative no-cost meeting spaces in the city. Both the YMCA and the Boys and Girls Club offer meeting rooms to nonprofits at no cost. And these organizations are independent nonprofits, so they are not beholden to the gift of the public funds requirement. Here are the operating revenues and expenses for the last 2 years at Beaver Lake Lodge. All of the revenue listed is from rentals, and then expenses include custodial services, utilities, and other routine servicings. Staff hours are not included here. Senior services at the lodge has some impact on the reduced fee that you're seeing in 2023, but we also increased our rental fees slightly, so the full cost of senior services at the lodge is not shown here. Okay, per the goals of the PROS plan, our rental fee is based on the market average for similar rented facilities in our area. We share this information now to show you that the current rentals at the lodge do not lead to full cost recovery of operations, meaning the city does subsidize, to an extent, all of our rentals. And then to reiterate, the purpose of charging nonprofits for rental time is not to aid in cost recovery or lead to profit, but is to avoid the potential audit finding from the state. So here's that suggested motion for you. Thank you for listening. We welcome any questions.
Thank you. And did you have, or Carrie, you might have had questions from council members today via email? We can start with Deputy Mayor Howe. Do you want to?
Thank you, Mayor. So just for the public's awareness, I did circulate for informational purposes a couple of tables in an email. Also further explanation about the gift of public funds doctrine that arises in the state constitution. And from that email, council asked some questions, and I would just encourage council so that the public has the benefit of the discourse on this important topic, that you raise your questions here so everyone can hear your questions and the answers provided. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Deputy Mayor Howe?
Thank you. I think, I know I speak for myself and perhaps for some others as well, that we're all concerned about this because we want to make sure that the amenities are available to sports organizations, to youth groups, to nonprofits at the lowest possible price. I mean, my question had been, can we just have a new fund in the human services budget that is for operational expenses for nonprofit organizations that they can apply any way that they can? We can't dictate it, but that could they use that money then to use it for rent, for example? So that was an idea. I was told by our attorney that that was problematic. But, you know, as you look at this and try to okay, so what else could we do? Could we make it so that we don't charge at all? And that, in fact, what it is now is donation-based, based on your income as a nonprofit. And so now it's, we'll make a suggested donation to cover your expenses, but based in, like, if it were a really big organization that could afford it, then they should pay the market rate or close to it. But for organizations that simply cannot do that, or it's prohibitive, and where the spaces that we're suggesting as free, they don't have the indoor-outdoor space that some of these organizations really need to be successful. So I'm wondering if there's other ways we can look at this from a creative point of view that would relieve us from the audit responsibility, because I'm very cognizant of that and aware, but trying to come up with some other way that we could approach this. Also, don't we have to charge the seniors for the senior program then?
I can answer the senior program portion, Council or Deputy Mayor Howe, and the answer to that is that they are actually providing a service on behalf of the city, and we are funding that service.
So conceivably, other nonprofits could be providing a service.
Conceivably, yes. I think that what has to, getting to that point of what actually constitutes a city service, I think that's the piece that's a little more challenging to find.
Okay.
Councilmember Lamb or Carrie.
If I may, Mayor and Council, I just wanted to respond a little bit more to Deputy Mayor Howe's comments. I really appreciate the intent. The intent is really laudable. You know, I can hear that there's a desire to try to help the nonprofits not only find space, but find it at a really attainable, reasonable cost. And so what we're doing from a staff perspective is we're trying to inform you in your policymaking decision. So in order to try to inform you, we gave you a survey of other nearby jurisdictions, comparable cities, and provided a range of what they provide. And many of them don't offer any discount whatsoever. As you know, and as Janie explained in her presentation, some provide a discount based on if you are a city resident or a non-resident, and then some also provide a discount to nonprofit organizations. Here at Sammamish, as you heard Janie explain, for Beaver Lake Lodge in particular, every rental is subsidized because it's operating at a loss. That said, we've tried to provide other options for nonprofits. Janie also mentioned that nonprofits have space such as the Y operating at our Sammamish Community Aquatic Center and the Boys and Girls Club operating at our Teen and Rec Center. And those groups, as well as Eastside Fire and Rescue, they have conference rooms at their fire stations. Those are all options. I just want to make the public aware of those additional options for meeting space. And then in addition, I like your creative thinking, of course, always. But your suggestion about having this administered in a way that's somehow akin to social services, human services programs is really creating a program that frankly we don't have the staff to support because it would require an application process. There would need to be criteria established. It would all need to be vetted and administered. And all of that, as you know, takes staff time and actually makes us operate at even more of a loss. So that is a practical difficulty. And so when I said problematic, you know, that's an oversimplified broad one-word response. And I wanted to just flesh that out a little bit more for hopefully people's understanding. I hope that helps.
Councilmember Lamb.
What percentage do non-residents reserve for our athletic fields and Beaver Lake and all of that? Because it'd be great to have that subsidize the nonprofits, particularly the youth.
I'm going to look to Emily to try answer that.
Sure. So I don't have that exact number in front of me. I know you mentioned athletic fields. We have a lot of data collected for tonight, just in regards mostly to the lodge. So the lodge is where our nonprofits have received free use. Otherwise, that policy doesn't extend to athletic fields or other facilities. So I don't have that number for you, but we can get it for you in the following days. But for the most part, it's going to be, we have a lot of residents that use our spaces. We also have a lot of, there's a fair amount of nonprofits that come from neighboring cities to use the lodge because their city may not offer a discount at all anymore. So we do see that.
So I only said athletic fields because it's in the recommendation for the motion that the facility rentals, it says Beaver Lake, it says picnic shelters and athletic fields. So I thought like what we're talking about charging encompasses all of them, all of these areas.
So the free use is only for Beaver Lake Lodge and the pavilion to nonprofits.
Okay.
That doesn't apply to athletic fields and picnic shelters.
Okay. So I'd like to see those numbers for non-resident use because I would really like to give preference to our residents and have the non-residents subsidize a more discounted rate for nonprofits and youth.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, I think Deputy Mayor Howe and I are actually thinking on the same wavelength this time. I would love to see us be able to offer, particularly to our youth-based organizations, a much deeper discount in the city. And I do feel, as the city attorney advised us, that we have to really have a sound justification for this, and I appreciate that. And for me, the biggest justification is that while we have an amazing Parks Department and they put on some amazing events, we do not have a recreation department. We are not a parks and rec organization. So these youth-based organizations are in fact providing a service to our city residents that the city cannot otherwise provide. And so to me, that's the justification for being able to provide very deep discounts, particularly to the youth-based organizations. And I do think other nonprofits, I'm not discriminating against people who are not youth. We're all envious of the youth, let's be honest. But I think I would be comfortable with like a two-tiered, a discount to all nonprofits, and then for those youth-based organizations to have an even deeper discount. And I hope that that would be an appropriate justification, just as we do provide senior services. That's something that the city provides. We don't have those same kinds of services for others. So that's where I am coming in, and I'm, anxious to hear what other people think, and if anyone has kind of a comfortable number in mind. So,
Councilmember Gupta.
Yeah, I think I'm coming from the same direction, where I would like to see kind of as low of a number as we can hit. But I'm also, I don't want to just pass a policy that is then not going to solve the problem that we are trying to solve. I do have a couple of questions. One, I guess I'll start with the questions that I had emailed to Carrie. Is in the table that we were sent, it did mention that Issaquah has a free nonprofit room. So I just wanted to know what their justification was, if we know that. How do they defend that in this, without falling afoul of the gift of public funds rule? I also had a couple of questions for staff. If I read it correctly, we are removing the distinction between rentals for residents versus rentals for non-residents. I remember when I was in the Parks Commission, we implemented that, so I was curious what the impetus was to go ahead and remove that. And then last question is, if we do choose to offer a greater discount to youth-based nonprofit organizations, how do we make that distinction? Is that just a staff, is staff the one that decides that this is a youth organization and this isn't? Or is there some official designation? So,
I'll try and answer some of them and then look to you, Emily, to add to that. So as the city has not distinguished between a resident and non-resident rate for a while. We are just using this update to clarify that. And the reason is it's very easy. The first thing people do is to find a resident on the plateau to apply for the permit, and then they use the space at the resident rate. So it's too much for the one staff we have that does all our rentals to go in and research who is truly a resident or not a resident. So that's about the resident rate. And then I'm sorry, can you repeat your other question?
Sure, sorry. Who decides what a youth-based organization is? Is that like an official designation when you apply for a 501c3, or is it a staff choice?
All the nonprofits are 501c3s, so that's clear. And then we do have an age distinction for adult leagues for fields, but we are talking about the lodge. Would we apply the same age, Emily, for adults versus youth?
Yes, we'll want to be consistent with that, but again, it will take a little bit of internal staff time and policy to write that up, and we will have to research what address the 501c3 is given to. So we'll have to follow up with kind of an internal process and document that staff will follow across the board for all of our rentals.
Great, thank you.
I did have a couple of questions that I think I'm not in favor of having like that administrative oversight trying to figure out youth versus not. So I think one deep-ish discount, whatever that means, it's not nominal, that's not 100%. So Carrie, I know you mentioned something earlier about the nominal amount. How would you define nominal?
So again, just as a frame of reference, in the table that I provided, which is a public record, if anybody wants to see that, it's not marked attorney-client privilege, so it could be obtained. In the comparable data that we looked at, the deepest discounts, if you will, were given by City of Bellevue, for nonprofits, and they don't make any distinction between if it's youth-oriented or not. In addition, there's a tiered approach at Maple Valley, and they provide a 30% discount. Well, they have levels 10, 20%, but also 30% for City of Maple Valley governments, and again, 501c3 nonprofits, no distinction for youth. In terms of my comfort level, personally, you know, this really does come down to the gift of public funds doctrine in our state constitution, how the state auditor's office interprets that, how that's been interpreted by the courts in case law. And from a risk analysis, risk management perspective, obviously I'd feel really comfortable at the 30% mark, which I know is higher than the staff recommendation, but it's consistent with Bellevue. It's also consistent with that deepest discount tier that Maple Valley offers. Anything higher than that, obviously Sammamish would be testing the the limits and being more progressive, if you will, about that. And so that's just really about council's risk tolerance, frankly. But from a legal perspective, and I tend not to give legal advice from the dais or in open session. If we can have an executive session if you want to deep dive into legal analysis, but certainly anything that is 50, you know, more than 50%, I would feel very uncomfortable with, frankly, because it would be, in my view, too great of risk of eliciting an audit finding. Again, happy to have an executive session if you want to have a deeper dive.
No, I appreciate that. And I didn't know if we're just talking about Beaver Lake Lodge, like average hourly use, is there a percentage that would cover, so we're not gifting maintenance, cleaning, that, is there a, or is that the 25?
So even the folks who are paying a full rate are still subsidized. The amounts you saw up there are just what it takes to keep the lights on in the building, to, you know, your utility bills, your custodial services. Even if you had to give it a coat of paint, that isn't covered. There's no staff time. We have a facility monitor for full rentals at $20 an hour. That isn't shown.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I'd be comfortable anywhere 30 to 49.5. Go ahead, Carrie.
I just want to add again, you know, this is, for Beaver Lake especially, a situation where the city's already subsidizing because we're operating that facility at a loss, as shown in the presentation. And so, you know, what would be really helpful too is, you know, this is obviously council's policy call, but whatever the council decides, it'd be really helpful if you did try to articulate, you know, the justification for this. If you maybe want to direct the city manager to make sure that there's policies established where, if, for example, it is a nonprofit, they maybe have to also clean up. And I don't know, again, if this is going to meaningfully help our staff, or, you know, if that's really maybe not the best idea, but I'm just trying to help create a legislative record to support the rationale for why we would do this. Obviously, you heard Councilmember Stewart trying to articulate, and I think she makes a valid point, that we don't offer recreation programs. And so to the extent that these nonprofits in our community are offering that and providing that, you know, that is something that I think is worth noting for the record. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor Howe.
Thank you. I think the other piece of information I don't have is if we come up with a number, but if no one can afford it, then we haven't solved the problem. So I need to know what the number is, that saying, well, I can't afford this, but I can't afford that. What is that? Do we know that number? What is it? What is it?
I'll take that one, Jamie. I appreciate that, Deputy Mayor. I think the challenge is that it's going to be a different answer for every organization or individual.
And that's okay. But I don't even know what the range is. And I don't know how many groups can afford like this field for this period of time at this price. But these other groups, they can do this. I don't know the scope of the problem.
It's just the laws,
Oh, are we only talking about the lodge?
Yeah,
But everything else is
forgive
in
council, just for clarification, the policy document itself includes everything. This rental policy in particular only refers to Beaver Lake Lodge and picnic shelters.
Okay.
The pavilion.
Sorry, the pavilion at Beaver Lake. Sorry, apologies.
Can I ask a different question then about the event or the purpose? If it's being used for a wedding, you can certainly charge more for that. Could you recoup some of your costs that way so that it's event focused?
Again, we tend to not be, we try to be fair and even-handed with our policies and to make distinctions based more on whether you are a resident, not a resident, for-profit versus nonprofit, but not what are you doing as far as your use at the facility.
Is it a legitimate criteria?
Well, Deputy Mayor, if I may, just I think the challenge that we bump into there is that it really doesn't matter what's happening there. If you're using the facility and nobody else can use it, then by definition, it's only available to that group. So it's immaterial to an extent about what happens there. It's just more about whether it's either available or not.
Councilmember Stewart.
If I may be so bold, I would like to make a motion, and that is
We
that-
do have one, sorry, one. Okay, go ahead.
I'm happy to wait. Go ahead. Oh. I'd like to make a motion to approve the policies as presented with one minor change, which is to offer a 50% discount to nonprofits. Yeah, so that's my motion.
Second.
And then to speak to that, to help out our city attorney, again, I think that given that we don't provide recreational services as a Parks Department, again, not a slight on our amazing Parks Department and all of the events we do, I do think that just like we subsidize the senior services programs, that is why we can offer a discount, because our residents do need these types of activities that these nonprofits would be providing at Beaver Lake Lodge. Thank you.
Councilmember Trine, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, because a question of clarification on the motion would be the 50% discount for all nonprofits would that also include the fields?
I think this is just for Beaver Lake Lodge and the pavilion at Beaver Lake Lodge. That's what all of this is about.
Picnic shelters, pavilions.
So I should clarify, we are bringing in front of you updates to 4 policies for our athletic fields, picnic shelters, the Beaver Lake Lodge and Pavilion, and then for nonprofits. This discussion is only related to the nonprofits' use of the lodge and the pavilion.
And
Correct.
why not the fields?
Because that is a much bigger conversation.
Yeah. There isn't, we have a rate for youth, which is different from adults, and yeah, that is a whole separate conversation. So this policy is specific to the nonprofits' use of Beaver Lake Lodge and the pavilion.
And that's because that is for free for some right now.
It
And the
is
fields
free.
are not.
It has been
Thank
free.
you.
Yes. One quick question, Carrie, is 50% good with our attorney?
Well, council, I cannot make any guarantees, obviously, right? This is untested. I think you would be an outlier, frankly, compared to your neighboring jurisdictions. So I don't know, and it's really any rationale to support this is something that may or may not pass muster with the state auditor. It's sort of to be determined, but it sounds like you're willing to take that risk and see how it goes. That said, I really don't know.
Yeah, Councilmember Lamb.
I guess when I hear, I mean, think 50% I can get on board with that. I guess my concern is to hear that there are other nonprofits coming from other cities to use our facility. I guess I'm just concerned that their own cities aren't accommodating them. I don't know. I guess that's all.
Councilmember O'Farrell.
So, Carrie, question for you. When you say that this may or may not pass muster with the auditors, so when this goes before them or they take a look at it, is it that they would send us like a strongly worded letter and we would have to come back and relook at the policy, or is there like an instant, repercussion, or would we be given 90 days to amend our policy? Like, what could the possible repercussions be if they don't like what they see?
It could result in an audit finding. Those are best to avoid. Typically, you have to have a corrective action plan, and you have to show the auditor what steps you're going to take to get your city back into compliance. In other words, we'd be forced to change the policy to something that is more defensible. Also, annually, our city, like every other city, goes through an audit process, and the exit interviews, you're all invited to attend. And so I think it's a good process. As hard as it is to, tell a nonprofit, we can only give you this much discount. As you saw on our list of comparators, there's many cities that give no discount at all. And so you have to kind of choose your heart here. Are you going to have the difficult, decision as a policy call for your nonprofits, or are you going to have the difficult conversation with the state auditor and maybe, have to change your policy at some point if it doesn't pass muster? I don't know, but you can certainly take this policy approach and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think it's probably worth flying up the flagpole and see if it flies, see what happens. I take Councilmember Stewart's point that, we don't provide youth-based, not facilities, but we don't do any programming for our youth, and I think this is one way that we can support them. I support this. I think this is something that we should do, considering we have 30% of our population is under the age of 19. And we play a lot of sports here. We have a lot of nonprofits that provide the recreational programs that we don't as a city, so I think it's worth supporting.
All right, so a motion on the floor is to adopt the resolution as amended. So if no one else has comments, or are you still, your hand's up still, or your button's still on? I just want to make sure. Okay. All right, so all those in favor of the 50% and the rest of the policies say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Nay. Okay, so 5-2. Do you all have what you need?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I will just want to clarify that 50% is for regardless of age. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Emily. Thank you both. Okay, Scott, citywide capital improvement plan.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm going to ask you to hold for a second while Mike joins us back on the screen. He's going to be my driver for this portion of the program. He's going to be my Uber PowerPoint driver. All right, well, Council, as we've been discussing with you all, we're going to be coming back and doing things a little bit different around our budget process this year. And this is step one. This is sort of a intro to what a citywide capital improvement plan will look like. And so this is step one, and we will be coming back with further steps. So Mike, if you would. So for the upcoming biennial budget process, we have three main goals. And one we've already discussed with you last fall during the budget process and the fiscal sustainability work, which is to right-size our budget to more closely align our budgeted versus actual expenditures. And recall, as part of that means that we would, when we had things come up that we didn't plan for, we would be coming to council to ask for guidance and spending authority to address those in the future. The second part of that is to update and adopt comprehensive financial policies. We think there's a lot of conversation to be had there around our financial policies, and we're looking forward to bringing those back for a conversation with council and adoption as part of the biennial budget process. And then third, which tonight is addressing, is adopting a true citywide capital improvement plan. So the question is, you're asking, hopefully, well, what does it mean for a citywide capital improvement program? So just for clarity, a capital improvement program is a 6-year plan outlining the funding and timing of capital improvement projects. It's guided by our adopted long-range plans, goals, and policies. And for clarification, we are working on, as you saw earlier this evening, any number of goals and policies this year wrapped around our comprehensive plan and associated plans that have been adopted either as part of or will be, that will connect into this. And then the first 2 years of the CIP are typically included in the biennial budget as funded, if you will. The remaining 4 out years are the planning document that tells you where we need to be investing and where we think the money might be coming from. Bearing in mind, it's a dynamic process, and we anticipate projects being changed, added, deleted as the plan moves forward because situations change. Projects get delayed for various reasons, or a new priority comes up because we have something that needs to jump the queue, if you will. And so it allows the council to see and utilize and amend the CIP as needed. It also allows us to plan for 6 years of expenses, which is really important as we talk about our long-term fiscal sustainability. So this is another important key tool that will be part of our financial toolbox, as it were, moving forward. Thank you, Mike. So the current CIP process, council adopts these CIPs separately, and then they show up in the budget as 2-year budget documents. However, we have a couple other CIPs that are in progress that have not been adopted by council. And what you've seen historically has only been the 2 years in the budget, not a 6-year look at what we need to invest in moving forward. And just for an example, for instance, in this last year, you all approved Fire Station 83 feasibility. But the construction for Fire Station 83 comes in the next 2-year biennial budget. That wasn't part of what you all approved when we adopted the biennial budget back in 2022, in the fall of 2022. So what we need to be able to do is to connect those dots for you when you're making those decisions so you understand what further investments need to be made in out years. Next slide, please, Mike. So the citywide CIP combines all CIPs under one document. This is both for council and for the public. It works towards our fiscal sustainability by understanding what our true capital needs are and how to fund them. And it makes it more accessible for everyone to see what all the challenges are that the city has and where we're going with our capital improvement plans. So what might that look like? So this would be an expenditure summary. So recall right now, each of the capital funds has its own fund name and number. And so sometimes it gets referred to by its number. Try not to do that. Try to keep it at the actual name of the fund, because otherwise it's a little hard to keep up with. I even struggle with when I hear I get the 302 and the 340 mixed up all the time. So these are the capital funds. And for the general government fund right now, just for interest, that's generally general fund dollars that come out of the general fund and get put into the general capital fund, which is what that is. So these are the funds that we show, and we would be showing the 6-year look, and you'll notice in the very right-hand corner, future years. So that bumps us out to a 10-year look, so that some projects start in the out years and won't be completed until after the duration of this 6-year window. as we move forward year over year, you would start to see the rest of that project show up as the CIP moves forward. Next slide, Mike. So this is what it would look like for the actual funding for the different funds. So you will see in all of these unidentified sources, because we have to show funding for all the projects that are in the CIP. And so that unidentified sources could be other government contributions, it could be grants, it could be interlocal agreements, it could be new revenue sources. There's any number of things that could be in there that right now we don't have for sure the answers to, but we will be working on them as the CIP moves forward. And then the remainder of those are existing potential revenue buckets. So real estate excise tax is a big one. You'll see that in both the Parks and the Transportation Fund. That is a financial policy choice for council to distribute those funds in that way. So this is where the financial comprehensive policies come into play as well, because right now that's a 50-50 split for those revenues between those two funds. And then the Stormwater Capital Fund is an enterprise fund. And so those funds stay within that fund and don't commingle. The IT fund, or Information Technology Fund, is actually a general fund funded investment in our IT systems and programs. And so we'll be talking more about that a little bit later as we are in the process of doing an IT strategic plan, which will include a 6-year CIP as well. Next slide, Mike. So the citywide CIP will show detailed information about each of those funds. We'll be combining those, and you'll be able to see all of that, excuse me, in the budget document, and we'll break each of those funds out separately. And as we talk about these more, hopefully they become a little more easier to remember and refer to. Next slide, Mike. So we were also planning on doing project sheets. So the CIP projects will contain individual project sheets which show additional information, including a description, a justification and benefit of the project, excuse me, expenditures by category by year, and then funding sources for the individual projects. Again, this is to help further define where the money's coming from, where it's going to be spent, when it's going to be spent, and what the actual project is, so that when you look in the out years, council and the public can see what's coming and why we're doing what we're doing. Excuse me. So, lots more to come on this. Because we have timelines for some of these, functionally, council will be asked to adopt separate transportation improvement plan and stormwater improvement plans, or the TIP and the SWIP, to use some acronyms, to meet our statutory deadlines. Those will be coming in May and June, and we need adoption to meet state deadlines by the end of June. So those will come first, but then recall that the 2 years of those will wind up, you'll see those in the budget. And that doesn't mean that council can't change those as part of the budget process, but that's our guiding document leading into the budget. In July, we'll begin review of the proposed citywide CIP and looking at the remainder of funds. And then in fall, as part of the budget, we will be asking council to adopt the citywide CIP. So this is going to be a 3-step or more process. We expect to bring multiple touch points for council as we build this out and try to share out what all this looks like and how it works. So with that, I believe that that is the end of the presentation. So with that, we'd be happy to take questions about the sort of CIP 101.
Councilmember Lamb.
I think this will be great. I think it'll be really good to see all the funding sources for all the capital projects. So for some of the projects, like in the transportation CIP, some of those are unfunded. So will those not be captured in the project sheets?
It depends, Councilmember Lamb. I think it would depend on if they were planning on being funded in the out years, then we would include them in the project sheets. for those projects that don't make the 6-year CIP, then they probably wouldn't be included.
Okay, great, thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions or comments?
One other quick thing, Mayor, if I may, we plan on taking this presentation and putting it on the finance page on the city's website as part of trying to help build education about how the council and how the budget and the CIP works. And as we bring subsequent presentations, we will also try to bring those and put those on the website. You will be receiving a Capital Projects 101 from the Transportation Public Works Department next week. And we will also plan on putting that out there because it's a great primer on how an actual capital project works from start to finish.
Great, thank you. Thanks so much, Mike. I assume Michael will also be doing the city manager goals, maybe. All right, next up we have our Tree City USA recognition with Rose.
Good evening, Council. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yeah, you're all good.
Perfect. Share my screen here.
Rose, will you introduce yourself while you're pulling that up?
Absolutely. For those of you who are not familiar, my name is Rose Weicker, and I am the Natural Resource and Environmental Sustainability Coordinator here in Sammamish. I'm here to present tonight on Tree City USA. The City of Sammamish adopted an urban forest management plan on November 4th of 2019. This plan includes community goal number C3, pursue and maintain Tree City USA status.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but we can't see your presentation.
Oh. Go ahead and try here. Apologies. All right. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Yes, okay, wonderful. Thank you. All right. And can you see the next slide?
Yes.
All right, starting from the beginning, the City of Sammamish adopted an urban forest management plan on November 4th of 2019. This plan includes community goal number C3, pursue and maintain Tree City USA status. Tree City USA is a national program sponsored by the Arbor Day Foundation in cooperation with the USDA Forest Service and the National Association of State Foresters. It provides the foundational framework necessary for communities to manage and expand their tree cover, including direction, assistance, attention, and recognition to urban and community forestry programs. There are 4 standards that must be met prior to application, all of which I will explain in more detail on the following slides. The first standard is that there must be a tree board or department in place. This standard can be met by having a single professional forester, arborist, an entire forestry department, or a tree board, which is a group of volunteer citizens charged with the management of the community's trees. The Sustainability Commission will serve as Sammamish's tree board and will work closely with the Sustainability Coordinator to be liaisons for tree management programming in Sammamish. The second standard is a public tree care ordinance that establishes a tree board with the responsibility for public tree care. The existing Sammamish tree ordinance gives guidance for planting, maintaining, and removing trees on public property in Sammamish, and the Department of Community Development will be facilitating a tree code update in 2025. The intent of this standard is for each tree city to set good policy and back it with the force of the law when necessary. The third standard is Sammamish must document at least $2 per capita towards the planting, care, and removal of city trees, and the planning activities to make those things happen. This may be accumulated through a variety of expenditures, including tree planting, watering and maintenance, equipment usage and the value of volunteer labor, and tree care workshops and memberships. Sammamish has a well-established restoration program with both steward-led and city-led restoration events occurring throughout the year. In 2023, the city managed just over 106,000 square feet of habitat and planted over 1,700 native plants at our various restoration sites. The sustainability coordinator may work with finance to track the amount spent on urban forestry in 2024 to report to the Arbor Day Foundation in the 2024 Tree City application. And finally, the fourth standard is an annual Arbor Day observance and proclamation. Arbor Day celebrations provide an opportunity to educate the community about tree planting and care. Council approved the Arbor Day proclamation at tonight's meeting, and Sammamish's first Arbor Day celebration will be a tree planting event with the City Council and Arbor Montessori School on April 22nd, 2024. The Tree City portal populates the current year's application in September. This means that Sammamish would be applying for Tree City recognition in the fall of 2024. With that in mind, meeting all four standards requires action throughout the year. Staff are seeking council direction to pursue each standard, which can be accomplished within existing staff and budget. When the application for the 2024 Tree City recognition opens in September, the sustainability coordinator will apply on behalf of the City Council. Thank you.
Great, thanks so much, Rose. Council? Questions, comments, a motion? Councilmember Stewart?
Yes. Yes, please. Do you have a proposed motion, or do we just need to make a motion to direct us to apply in September? Sorry.
I think that works.
All right. I move that we direct the city manager to apply for Tree City status.
Second.
We got seconds and thirds.
Yeah, it's been moved and seconded. I will let, if you'd like to speak to that motion first, but Councilmember Lamb also has a comment or question.
I just want to say thank you, Rose. This is exciting.
Councilmember Lamb?
I support this, but I also saw on your slide that the Sustainability Commission would fulfill the obligation of the tree board and like an arborist and I think you mentioned something else. But I don't think that the Sustainability Commission, given that it has so much on its plate regarding climate, et cetera, that it could be the equivalent of an arborist. And this is probably more of a question to the city manager is where would we, in the process, if we wanted to hire an arborist, when would that happen?
Councilmember Lamb, there's a couple of different components in there. I think in terms of meeting the requirements for the Tree City USA, I think the Sustainability Commission can actually fulfill that role. If it's council's desire to hire an arborist, that would be a conversation as part of the budget process to authorize a new position for an arborist, and that's where we would have that conversation. And part of what we would need to understand is, what councils want the arborist to do, what would be their goal. But hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, I do support it. I just noted the distinction, and like the city manager was saying, I do agree that for now we can use that to apply for the Tree City.
Great. Anything else? All right. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Great. Thank you so much, Rose.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I did have one question, Rose, before you leave, unless you're already gone. Oh, yeah. Sorry, what?
I'm here.
Oh, yeah. If you apply in September, do we hear back? Do they have like a hear back time, or did you say that?
I would have to get back to you on that. I believe it's a pretty quick process for review. So we should know by the beginning of 2025 and be able to get that information, but I can get back to you with a specific
Awesome.
timeline.
Yeah, no worries. I can probably just Google it right here. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Mike is back. City Manager 2024 goals. Scott.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm waiting for Mike to join me here. So council will recall as part of the discussion when council discussed at the retreat was to have my goals come once council has adopted their council goals. So with the understanding that tonight we were hopeful, and thank you for moving the goals forward, I thought it was appropriate to then bring the city manager goals at the same time for council's review and potential approval. So with that, I would turn it over to you all for any conversation, questions, or potential changes that you might want to make to those.
Okay, sorry, I think we're all just scrolling to them. All right, council, I will open it up. All right, Scott, great, thanks. Just Councilmember Lamb.
I guess I'll start. We're gonna have to go back to the 3B, the dashboard that it utilizes community survey. We're gonna have to add the measurables. I'm sorry. And for 3B, which is the fourth one down, developing and implementing a regular from the desk of the city manager. I was thinking a little bit more on this after our discussion, and I actually don't want to move forward with that. I prefer that I think you had talked about trying to figure out the distinction between what kind of information you would be writing, and I think currently what we're doing is fine.
All right, if no one else is going, I do like that Councilmember Lamb removing that from the desk of, because I think you're right. I'm not sure what would go in there either, or what the cadence would be, and how much extra that would be on communication staff. So I agree with that. I do like the goals where they're at. I'm good if we add that piece up. Where did you say? Was it 1B, 1B1 maybe? Yeah. So I'm good with that as well. And if Scott, if you want to fill the silence until someone else comes up with another, I think we have a lot of agreement. Yeah.
Council can do this as formally or informally as you want. If everyone's in agreement, I think Mike can make that change in the document, and that totally works.
I don't know why it's so quiet all of a sudden. This is so odd. Yeah. Does anyone disagree with Councilmember Lamb's? All right. Okay. Just take off that watermark, and I think we're good.
All right. Thank you, Council.
Awesome. All right. Scott, would you like to do a city manager report?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. This one will be pretty quick. I just want to remind, as we've rolled into April, that Earth Day is coming up on April 20th. I'd like to make sure to invite the community out for Earth Day at Beaver Lake Lodge and the surrounding park around Beaver Lake Lodge. It's a great event. It's well attended, and hopefully we'll get everyone out this year. Otherwise, I think I can't believe it's April, and we are moving into the event season. So please watch your calendars, and we will be as the events start cropping up as we move into May and June. We'll start to have more events. A couple of ones just to put on everyone's calendar as reminders. Rickapalooza will be in mid-May. Always a popular one with the younger set. And then we will be having a progress event in concert with our fabulous Sammamish Chamber at the Farmers Market, and we'll get more information out about that as well leading into June. So just a couple of upcoming things to put on everyone's radar. With that, I'll turn it back over to you, Mayor.
Cool. All right, Councilmember Lamb.
I just wanted to do a follow-up on the meetings that I have had. I included in your packet is follow-up on the Public Issues Committee, the Solid Waste Advisory Committee, and the Board of Health. I did want to spend a little bit of time focusing on the Solid Waste Advisory Committee. We had a discussion at the meeting regarding every other week garbage pickup. King County is talking about this as from a policy perspective to implement this throughout King County. I mentioned during the meeting that that is something Sammamish is considering, and the director of solid waste stated that if Sammamish went ahead and decided to amend their contract to every other week collection, it would have strong support by the county, and it is their preference that we don't wait until King County makes a decision whether or not they wanted to implement that throughout the city and that we, throughout the county, and that we just move forward with our plan. Our contract ends with Republic on December 31st in 2028. That's 4 years from now. I think it's really important that we begin diverting our food waste and out of garbage. I'm showing a chart that shows a survey that Solid Waste did, and it shows very strong support for moving to every other week garbage as standard service. So it's 69% of the residents surveyed would support it. So I do believe that this is something that we should strongly consider. And, you know, I think that the sooner the better to look at amending our contract. And I think it's something that I think the city manager said that we could do perhaps at the end of this year. So I hope that's something we have support for.
Councilmember O'Farrell.
I just wanted to quickly mention I attended the RIA 8 meeting on March 20th. For those who are unsure what that is, their focus is mostly on salmon conservation and restoration in Lake Washington and the Cedar and Sammamish watersheds. So the meeting was just really the big focus was on the Ballard locks and the salmon recovery efforts that are going on there. And kind of the information and the news from the Ballard locks is not good. Chinook population and the sockeye population are drastically decreasing, and the harbour seal population is dramatically increasing, and both things are directly related. So they were working on a study right now as what to do about this situation, which every member of the RIA Commission, we've helped to fund that study. So they will be coming back to us with what they recommend on how to quell the populations of the harbour seals. And so we meet once a quarter, so I'll report back and see what's kind of going on with that. But as a result of that, it is affecting salmon populations throughout the region because of this. So seals are actually finding their way into the salmon ladder and eating the salmon as they're going in there. They eat the male salmon, they'll take a bite out of the male salmon, realize it's a male salmon, throw it away because they really want the female salmon. So that's why they're seeing dramatic decreases in the sockeye and Chinook population. So yeah, so more on that soon, I'm sure.
All right, anyone now? Councilmember Treen?
Yeah, last Wednesday I attended the SCA members, King County Growth Management Planning Council, and pretty much we had appointed the chair and deputy chair and then the work plan for the year. And the work plan consistently is going to make the agenda the same items throughout the whole year. So I can send you an agenda packet with the work plan, can come out to you guys here tonight. Thanks.
Councilmember Stewart.
I am super proud to be attending the Growth Management Policy Board meeting this Thursday, where none other than the City of Sammamish will be presenting. So super excited. It'll be predominantly focused on work that's happening around the region on climate action. So I'll be sure and share out all of the presentations and any fun facts that we learn. And rooting on our city staff.
Awesome. Anyone else? Or anyone that'd like to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Great. Good night, everyone.